Per reports, the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested in free agent wide receiver Michael Thomas. So, a lot of things have went right for the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason in terms of addressing needs on the roster, but wide receiver just hasn't been one of them. The team obviously traded away starter Deontay Johnson to the Carolina Panthers for cornerback Dante Jackson, and they have tried to fill holes since then in the wide receiver position. For example, signing Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, and also drafting Michigan wide receiver Roman Wilson in the third round of this year's 2024 NFL Draft. But the Steelers still need a wide receiver. They still need someone who could be a reliable number 2 option besides George Pickens, other than people who you might project to be the number 2, but just really have no prior experience being so or stats being so other than in college. So, looking at this, maybe getting a wide receiver like Michael Thomas could fill a really big need on the roster, and it seems as though the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested. But first, before I get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also, like the video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, per Zachary Smith of Steelers Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested in signing free agent wide receiver Michael Thomas and have been in contact with him. And the reason why I'm using this as a source is because this same person is the one who basically projected and released the Pittsburgh Steelers schedule for this season days before it came out. So he had it first, and he got it right too. And also, he had some news about some other things that happened this offseason as well, which came true. So he says that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been in contact with free agent wide receiver Michael Thomas. Just looking at this, if it does happen and the Steelers do sign him, or maybe why the Steelers are interested, there's one time where Michael Thomas was in discussion as a top wide receiver in the NFL. From 2016 to 2019, Michael Thomas, he started 57 games and caught 470 passes for 5,512 yards and 32 touchdowns. He was the Offensive Player of the Year in 2019 and also first team All-Pro in 2018 and 2019. This was when Drew Brees was the quarterback, and also when they had like Jameis Winston, I believe, when Drew Brees was getting injured a little bit later towards the end of his career. So it was going back and forth between Michael Thomas and a couple other receivers as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But unfortunately, the last 4 seasons have been filled with injuries, including missing all of the 2021 NFL season with an ankle injury and most of the next season with a foot injury as well. Thomas, he's now 31 years old, and his injury history is kind of problematic, but also if he bounces back in a way in which he's healthy and he's over his injuries, maybe he could get back to maybe not being exactly the player he used to be in terms of breaking the record for most catches in a season, in which he broke when he had 149 back in 2019. He still holds that record, most catches in NFL history in one season. So he's not going to get back to that, but if he could get back to half of what he used to be, and he put up 1,725 yards that season, if he could put up 800 yards in a season, it would be really nice to just have a second wide receiver and someone who specializes in a certain category. Yes, I'm saying Michael Thomas, he could help this team. And many people call him slant man, slant boy, whatever you want to call him. That's mainly because the routes that he ran with the Saints, with Drew Brees, just the route tree in general was slants. That's why. That was a route that he perfected. Slants. But that's something the Pittsburgh Steelers could really use. Someone who could run slants. Because when you look at the past few years for the Steelers, they barely run any slants. And they just don't have someone who could run slants and do it effectively. So having Michael Thomas, who could be that person who could just perfect it and just be out there and running slants to perfection, sure, that could be a huge need for the Steelers. And also, he's a big body receiver too. When you look at the receiver the Steelers picked up this offseason, they already have Kelvin Austin, who like 5'8", 5'9". They picked up Scotty Miller, who's like 5'9" as well. Quez Watkins is shorter wide receiver. They also have some other receivers on the team who are like a little bit on the shorter side. The only big receiver they really have is Michael Thomas and kind of Van Jefferson. Other than that, their receivers are on the shorter side. So Michael Thomas, he stands at 6'3", 212 pounds. Getting someone on the outside with his size and someone built actually pretty big and can run and catch passes on the inside could be really helpful. He's not going to be the deep ball threat. He never was in his career, even though he did put up 1,700 yards plus, and multiple times he put up 1,400, 1,200, 1,100 in seasons. He was never a deep ball threat. He was doing it with intermediate passes. So the Pittsburgh Steelers already have deep ball threats. George Pickens could be one. Kelvin Austin could be one. The person, Roman Wilson, who they just drafted, could be one. So they already have those deep ball threats. So getting someone in the intermediate and kind of perfects that kind of area could be really helpful. And the Pittsburgh Steelers being in contact with them could be really big. And also, just looking at the receivers they've been in contact with, or at least have shown interest in trading for example, Courtland Sutton, would you really want to give up a third-round pick for Courtland Sutton? Or would you rather just get Michael Thomas on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal, I believe it would be if the Steelers were to get him? I don't think it would be more than that, especially with his injury history, him not being healthy, and him just trying to prove himself. He would morally take probably like a prove-it deal. So would it be better to trade a third-round pick for a wide receiver who is not really a top-tier guy? Or would you rather sign someone who has been a way better wide receiver than Courtland Sutton, but has just been dealing with injuries? I would rather take a prove-it deal than to trade a third-round pick for a wide receiver. That's just my thoughts. And that's mainly not because I don't like Courtland Sutton, but because I think a third-round pick, and when it comes draft time, you're going to really wish you still have that third-round pick. Especially if you're not making that move to win a Super Bowl, you want to trade picks that can actually help you win a Super Bowl. And is getting Courtland Sutton really the Super Bowl mover? Is that really going to be the move that makes us win a Super Bowl? I don't really think so. So trading a third-round pick just wouldn't make sense in my eyes. And maybe getting a guy like Michael Thomas, if he gets back to being healthy, could be a big move. And he hasn't been healthy. So I like saying this about players who haven't been healthy. Yes, you could count them out, but you're counting them out when they're down. The last time he was actually healthy, in which he played 16 games, was the year he broke the record for catches and put up 1,700 yards. Since then, he just hasn't been healthy. And even just looking at the start of the other season back in 2022, he played in 3 games. Yes, he played in 3 games, but he was going off in those 3 games. He was putting up touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, but then he got injured. So yes, injuries happen, and hasn't been healthy in 3-4 years. But you're counting the person out when they're injured. I like to at least give them one more shot. If he gets injured again, sure, then you move on. But signing a guy like him could really help, and really help George Pickens as well perfect what he wants to do. We know George Pickens is a deep ball threat, but we need him to perfect the intermediate passing game in terms of the middle of the field, and maybe Michael Thomas could help him in that area. They're both big body receivers. They play differently though. Michael Thomas, like I said, is the middle of the field. George Pickens is the deep part of the field. They're not similar in how they play, but hopefully Michael Thomas, if he does sign, or if the Steelers do bring him in, he could help George Pickens develop into what he could be in the future. So this move, the Steelers are interested in free agent wide receiver Michael Thomas, and this leaves the door open as well to other wide receivers like Kelvin Austin getting playing time. Because if you trade for Courtland Sutton, he's automatically going to be the number 2 wide receiver. But if you sign free agent Michael Thomas, he's going to come in and maybe be the 3rd, 2nd wide receiver, but it still leaves the door open for other guys to play. Especially if he's on a really low contract, you just don't expect him to play every single down or every single play. And his contract wouldn't make it worth that as well. So he would be able to play other wide receivers, and you just wouldn't take away other people's development as well. Based off, if you trade for Courtland Sutton, you have to play him because he's making like $12 plus $1 million. So that contract wouldn't be worth it if you're not going to play him every down. So having guys like other guys like Kelvin Austin develop, Roman Wilson develop, and bringing in a guy like Michael Thomas who has done it in his career already can really help this team. And yes, I'm a big advocate for it. I don't want to trade for a wide receiver unless it's a top tier guy. Anyway, that's the end of this video, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about the Steelers being interested in Michael Thomas and this report. Do you think it's a real report? Do you think it's just a fake report? And also, how would you feel if the Steelers did sign him? Do you want them to? Do you think they should go in a different direction? Do you want them to trade for a wide receiver? Or do you believe this would be a really good move based off what his past history was and him just not being healthy, which kind of shorthanded his career? But you think he'd get back to being what he could be in terms of at least half the production he used to put up. Also, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, highlights, reports, updates, analysis, film breakdowns, reactions, everything like that. I cover everything Pittsburgh Steelers. I have been doing so this whole offseason, and I'll continue doing so as well throughout the offseason and the regular season. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you guys all later. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.